We clasp the hands of those that go before us. Can you picture it? And the hands of those who come after us after they're done tossing confetti. Can you picture it? And the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance. Can you picture it? And the larger circle of all creatures passing in and out of life who move also in a dance. Picture that. Who move to a music so subtle and vast that no one hears it except in fragments. Can you hear it? I turn to this poem by Wendell Berry again and again, because I've always felt that religious community, my life's calling, is at its best something like a dance. A line dance, maybe, where we swing our partner round and round and weave our lives together and spin in wider and wider circles, holding hands, as we seek to grow the boundaries of love to include us all. But lately, I've been also loving that last line about moving to a music so subtle and vast that no ear hears it except in fragments. Because lately, I've been feeling a bit like I can't hear the music. Like the culture around us, all this business as usual in the face of climate disaster and global pandemic and cruelty. Like it's playing a formal minuet to drown out the suffering. And all I hear are crackling flames and refugees weeping. Like when I'm out there in the world, I'm in a Jane Austen novel, and everyone keeping the economic machine running is hopping and ball changing respectably in their gowns. And I'm in the corner wearing my pajamas, doing the running man. And looking around to see, can anybody else hear the suffering too? Does anybody else want to dance to that music instead? That's part of why this community is so important to me. Because I think here we're listening for all of it together, tuning our ears to hear the beauty that is so present and so sustaining, and the suffering that is so profound and so frightening. Here we are listening for all of it together. And we're trying to weave a new dance, to keep the movement going and spin wider and more inclusively, to bring everybody into something more connected than the solitary running man, but also messier than the polished toe-tapping of aristocrats. Maybe it's a hip-hop line dance, or a honky-tonk. Maybe it's contact improv or the Lindy Hop. Maybe it is a wheelchair ballet or a powwow fancy dance. Probably it is some of all of that and so much more too, steps from every culture, weaving our bodies and lives into a moving tapestry of people trying to stay connected and whole as the world around us unravels at the edges. Our worship arc for this year that we're beginning today is called Let It Be a Dance, Moving Together Through Precarious Times. And each month we'll be exploring a different quality of movement that will help us keep going amid all that is uncertain and undetermined and at risk. And your worship associates and I chose the word precarious very carefully in order to describe the times we're living through. It's a word that came into English in the 1640s when it was a legal term that meant held through the favor of another. It comes to us from the Latin word precarius, depending on favor or obtained by asking or praying, which in turn came from the root prex, which means prayer. At another church, this sermon might take a predictable turn to declaring that precarious times require prayer. And while I certainly believe that spiritual practice of all kinds will be a deep part of what carries us through, I'm more interested in the relationality of the word precarious than its shared root with the word prayer. Prayer, after all, is directed somewhere, to someone or thing. And the etymology dictionary shows that precarious is a relational word, reminding us that each of us is quite literally held through the favor of another. The author of the entry notes that the more common use of precarious today to simply mean uncertain or dangerous is a departure from the true origin of the word, which is something more like dependent on the will of another. When something is precarious, it is uncertain, but it is uncertain because of our dependence on others, from which we cannot and would not untangle ourselves. This world, this life, each of our lives is tangled up with every other life, held through the favor of others. So our precariousness holds inside its meaning our interconnection, one of the bedrocks of the Unitarian Universalist tradition. Precariousness is a fact of life, and it is a fact of life that means we are interwoven. And it means that entanglement is as risky as it is rewarding, that the world is unfolding amid great uncertainty, in part because we are so woven together. Or to say it another way, because we are dancing intricate steps that depend on every dancer to keep the line going. And because we are so tangled up that we will trip on each other, and sometimes it will all fall apart, and we will have to take our places again and remake the line and reweave the dance. And that here we are committed to reweaving it to the music that contains all of life, that sometimes we can barely even hear. A Canadian colleague of mine named Liz James went to a contra dancing camp this summer, and she came back with a big lesson for living in these times, which she shared with her Facebook followers and gave me permission to share with you. She writes, "These are turkey arms. They represent a powerful teaching." She writes, "In contra dancing, I get mixed up a lot, and then I sow confusion and chaos all around me. Or I did until I learned about turkey arms. The caller had us do a dance with the kids where there were farmers paired with turkeys. And as things sped up, there was whirling and twirling, and sometimes people got separated. And the caller taught us when this happened, you were supposed to make turkey arms. And some farmer would find you and spin you right back into the dance. Fun and chaos ensued, and our teacher explained that you can use turkey arms whenever you're lost. In any contra dance. People will see, and they'll spin you right back in and put you in the right spot." Liz writes, "This works. I tested it a lot." Turkey arms is a good metaphor, she says, for how when you are lost, it is good to own up and not be afraid to make turkey arms. It's not the first mistake that creates the chaos. It's the failure to let people find you and help. Fun fact, she says, the 16 beats you get for Swing Your Partner is not enough time to explain the spiritual metaphors and life lessons of turkey arms, even if you are a very fast talker. If you try, you will mess up the next move, which will be fine because turkey arms. She writes, "Finally freed of anxiety over destroying the line, I could pay attention to the process of turkey rehabilitation. And this is what I learned. The other dancers didn't mind the mistakes. I only imagined that they scowled at my chaos. When I looked, I saw that the response to a line falling apart was laughter. The line falling apart and getting fixed again is part of the fun. I think it's like that a lot in life," she writes. "When you are the turkey needing to find your spot, it's easy to imagine you are wrecking things. It's easy to forget that the chaos can be joyful and part of the dance, and that helping another person find their spot is one of the great joys of being human. Not always, but often. More often than we imagine." So that's the end of Liz's story about turkey arms, and the beginning of our year, letting it be a dance through precarious times. because we are moving together through intricately woven days. And they're confusing. And some of us don't know the steps that will carry us through. All we know is that if we can't find a way to keep moving, this whole thing will unravel. So Liz gives us good news. That maybe staying in the dance, showing up for community in crumbling times is as simple as sticking out your arm when you're lost and looking out when you're in the groove for arms to grab and swing back into the dance. And that maybe it can be joyful to reweave what has unraveled again and again, to keep fixing the line, even as the cruelty around us seeks to cut those threads. As we seek to be community in this time, as we seek to survive and thrive, as we nurture all the beauty that is still growing and sprouting in the compost of what has crumbled, we recognize that we must move together. And this year we will explore how, reminding ourselves that we must move together willingly, joyfully, collectively, tenderly, bravely, curiously, meanderingly, adaptively, and hopefully. We know that so much is unraveling all around us, and that it is only through continuing a beautiful, diverse dance that we will move our world inch by inch toward the beloved community we dream about, staying woven together and weaving back in anyone who loses their place. It is only by grasping onto our partner's outstretched arms that we can mend and tend the connections that sustain us, because it is all very precarious, and we are always having to mend and tend. The dance we are in right now is an intricate one, a great tapestry of joy and sorrow. So many sources of hope and so many terrible threats. And we must weave our bodies together with great intention if we're going to carry the thread, stay together, stay whole. Our lives are deeply interwoven no matter what we do. That weaving is beautiful and nurturing, but it is also threatening and frightening. There will be a million ways we fall out of the dance in the days to come, or even tear ourselves from the weaving in our fear. But the good news of community is that in the coming days there will be just as many opportunities to stick out your arm and find your way back in, mending and tending our woven lives so that we can stay connected and keep moving together to that deeper music. That music that carries the drone of sorrow alongside the descant of joy that keeps us moving still. Alice Walker has said that hard times require furious dancing. Perhaps precarious times require turkey arms. Let's stay in the dance, y'all. Circle up, keep it turning, keep it whole. And let's sing about it with hymn number 155 in your gray hymnal, Circle Round for Freedom, one of my very favorites in the entire hymnal. I'd like to invite you to rise or remain seated as you're most comfortable, and we're going to sing it through twice together because it's kind of short and I love it too much to only do it once.